All right, so you've given us a ton of stuff about self-discipline. Seems like you're ready to, actually get things done, like ditch the procrastination and all that.
Yeah,
But
totally.
before we get into like to-do lists and all the classic stuff, there's this really interesting idea you highlighted, clarity over willpower. It kind of flips the script on that whole just power through it thing, doesn't it?
It really does. And the research behind it is pretty amazing. Like, that Stanford study you included, the one about willpower?
Hmm.
It's not just about how much willpower we have, but how we even think about it. Apparently, people who believe willpower is like an unlimited resource, they actually stay more focused, even after doing mentally tough tasks.
So their mindset actually changes how much willpower they have.
It seems that way.
Wow.
Yeah.
So instead of picturing someone struggling to resist every temptation, it's more like, I don't know, like a driver on a long road trip.
Oh, I like that.
They've got choices along the way, right?
Totally.
And yeah, sometimes those quick detours look tempting.
Like that roadside diner with the mile-high pie.
Exactly. But it's not that the driver ignores the pie. It's that they're thinking about their main goal, arriving on time, feeling good.
It's all about clarity.
Mm.
Having that clear vision makes those little temptations less alluring.
Yeah. One article even said that believing willpower is limited might actually make us hit a wall faster.
Oh, and
Because we're basically like setting ourselves up for failure from the start.
it's more like, imagine you only have so much energy for the day, right?
Okay,
Would you waste it on things that don't really matter?
probably not.
Exactly. So if you believe your willpower is limited, you start hoarding it. You avoid anything challenging because you're scared of being empty later. But if you see it like a muscle, something that gets stronger with use.
You're more likely to use it. That's actually a huge shift in thinking. I always thought you either had willpower or you didn't. This is making me rethink things.
Right. It's a game changer.
This reminds me too about building systems and routines. You had that highlighted in one of the articles.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's like if our environment is already set up to support good choices, we don't have to think about them so much.
It takes the pressure off willpower alone.
Exactly. Instead of constantly agonizing over every little decision, we've designed our lives for success.
Exactly. You've got it.
Love that. One thing I've always struggled with is this idea that self-discipline equals no fun, like just deprivation. Do you see that a lot?
Oh, all the time. It's like the old narrative is that you have to be miserable to be disciplined, and that's just not true. It's unsustainable, too.
Yeah,
We need a new story.
definitely. You actually wrote emotional alignment in the margins of one of these books. What's that all about?
It really jumped out at me, too.
Oh,
It's about, like, tapping into the why
Mhm.
behind our goals. Like, what's the feeling we're chasing? If we can connect with that, the whole self-discipline thing becomes less about forcing ourselves and more about, I don't know, aligning our actions with our deeper values.
So instead of I have to work out, it's I want to feel strong and energized.
Exactly. Finding that I want to, that's already there, even if it's buried under a mountain of shoulds.
I like that.
For example, you mentioned wanting to write for an hour every day. What's the feeling you're hoping to get out of that? Is it the satisfaction of creating something?
Hmm.
The joy of storytelling? Or maybe a sense of accomplishment?
Honestly, it's all of those things. I get so caught up in the I should be writing that I totally forget why I even like it in the first place.
And that's the key. When we can tap into that emotional connection, it doesn't feel like discipline anymore. It feels like British stress.
That makes a lot of sense. But how do we actually do this? Like, how do people make this kind of self-discipline real?
Yeah, good point.
You highlighted SMART goals. Tell me more about that.
Okay, so the SMART framework is awesome for taking a vague goal and making it an actual plan. It stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
Okay, so instead of just saying, I want to write more, a SMART goal would be,
I will write for 30 minutes every morning before work, 5 days a week for the next month. This will help me achieve my goal of finishing my short story collection.
right, so much more concrete. And honestly, breaking it down like that makes it feel less overwhelming.
Exactly. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
It feels doable.
Plus, having those specific deadlines and measurable goals, that must make it easier to stay motivated,
Ah,
right?
you got it. It's about setting yourself up for success by creating that clear roadmap and then celebrating the wins along the way.
Speaking of setting ourselves up for success, you mentioned something called habit stacking. What is that?
Oh, it's so simple. You use your existing routines to build new positive habits. Basically, piggybacking on something you already do without fail.
Oh, interesting.
Remember that article about morning routines?
Yeah.
It was like using something you already do, like brushing your teeth and then attaching a new habit to it. So
Mhm.
maybe for me, it's putting my notebook and pen right by my toothbrush, like a little reminder to write. Exactly. Your
Mhm.
brain's already wired for that first habit, so it makes the new one more likely to stick.
Like a mental shortcut.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the more you do it, the stronger that connection gets
Yeah.
until it's practically
So
automatic.
instead of just willpower, we're using the power of like association and repetition. We're hacking our own brains for better habits.
I love that. Brain hacking for good.
Right. Now, you mentioned celebrating wins, and it made me think about that 30-day self-discipline challenge we talked about, the one you had bookmarked. What's that all about?
Oh, yeah. That fits perfectly with everything we've been talking about, especially with your goal to build self-discipline in a month. What I like about it is that it starts small, to get some momentum going.
So no diving into the deep end right away.
Exactly. Week one is all about micro habits, like that 30 minutes of writing you mentioned.
Okay.
The trick is to pick just one tiny habit, something super easy to do.
So if I've been wanting to meditate, but I always give up, maybe I just commit to like 2 minutes every morning.
Exactly. Just 2 minutes. The goal is to feel good about actually doing it, building that self-trust, one small win at a time.
Small wins, big impact, love it. So we're through week one, feeling good. What's next?
Week two is adding another micro habit, but keeping that first one going strong. It's about proving you can handle more without it feeling overwhelming.
Okay, so no biting off more than we can chew.
Right, we're building slowly, not trying to become superhuman overnight.
Right, right. Baby steps.
Exactly. Maybe you add 5 minutes of stretching to your morning routine after brushing your teeth. Just a little something extra.
So it's like those Russian nesting dolls. Every week we add a new layer of good habits, building on what's already there.
Perfect analogy.
Hmm.
And then comes week three. You've got these two new habits down. Now's when you step outside that comfort zone. Just a little. Time for something a little bigger.
So, time to tackle that mountain of unopened mail on my kitchen counter. That's been haunting me for weeks.
Exactly. Use those self-discipline muscles you've been working on for something more challenging.
Like finally organizing my desk, or maybe volunteering somewhere, or even just cooking a real meal instead of ordering takeout.
See? You're getting it.
It's amazing how much of this is all about mindset.
It really is. And that's where week four comes in. Reflection and adjustment.
Oh, interesting.
This part is so important, and people often skip it. It's where you look back at the month and see what worked, what didn't work. Celebrate the wins.
So we're not just stuck with the plan, no matter what.
Right. Flexibility is key. Maybe 2 new habits in week 2 is too much. Maybe you're ready for a bigger challenge next time. It's your journey. The plan is just a guide.
I like that. A lot of the stuff you shared talked about self-compassion too. How does that fit in with all this, especially when we mess up, which, let's be real, we all do.
So important. The research is clear. Being kind to ourselves, especially when we stumble, is huge for making these changes stick.
It's like we wouldn't beat up a friend for struggling with this stuff, right?
Exactly. We'd be understanding, encouraging. We've got to treat ourselves the same way. Remember, real change takes time.
Now, you mentioned something earlier that seemed a little strange to me about embracing boredom. I mean, our world is go, go, go all the time.
It sounds weird, I know, but think about it. Our phones, our TVs, everything's always demanding our attention.
True.
That constant need for distraction actually makes it harder to resist those quick dopamine hits. It weakens our willpower.
You're saying our brains are getting a workout, but not the right kind.
Exactly. It's like every time you resist checking your phone when you're bored,
Yeah.
you're doing a bicep curl for your willpower.
Okay, that makes more sense. So how do we work that boredom muscle when the world's designed to keep us entertained 204/7?
Start with tiny acts of resistance. Leave your phone in the other room during dinner. Don't turn on the TV the second you get home. Try just sitting with your thoughts for a few minutes instead of scrolling through social media.
So being more deliberate with our downtime.
Exactly. Even if it's uncomfortable at first.
I can see how that would apply to so many other areas of life too. Speaking of uncomfortable, there was another thing I wanted to ask you about. Delayed gratification. You highlighted that in one of the books.
Ah, yes. The marshmallow test for adults.
Right, but with slightly higher stakes than just getting a second marshmallow.
For sure. This is about resisting that impulse buy,
Mhm.
putting in the work on a project even when you'd rather be binging Netflix. Sticking to your budget when that new gadget is calling your name.
It's so tempting to just give in. How do we get better at waiting for the good stuff?
It starts with noticing those moments.
Mm.
When you're about to grab the easier, more immediately gratifying option,
Okay.
pause. Ask yourself, what will I gain if I wait? What's the bigger picture here?
So it's about dealing with discomfort now for a better payoff later, trading short-term pleasure for long-term gain.
Exactly. Like building up your tolerance for spicy food. What used to be unbearable eventually becomes enjoyable.
I love that analogy. Makes me realize that self-discipline is a lot like physical fitness. It takes time, effort, consistency. But if we do it right, we can all become mental marathon runners.
Exactly. And you know what's essential for any athlete? Sleep.
Oh, tell me you're not going to tell me to get 8 hours a night. I already know I should.
But you brought it up. Seriously, though, that study you found about sleep deprivation?
Hmm.
Fascinating. It really messes with our self-control, makes us way more impulsive.
So pulling all-nighters is basically the opposite of building good habits.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Your brain's running on fumes. You're going to reach for the quickest source of energy, usually junk food or instant gratification.
It's like trying to run a marathon on an empty stomach and no sleep. Recipe for disaster.
Exactly. So sleep. Prioritize it. It's like hitting the reset button on your willpower every night.
Fine, fine. 8 hours it is. What about other lifestyle things? Does what we eat or how much we move matter for self-discipline?
Definitely. You know that idea we talked about, how willpower can spill over from one area of life to another?
Uh,
Studies show exercise actually boosts our overall self-control,
yeah.
not just in the gym either, but everywhere.
So, dragging myself to that workout class, even when I'd rather melt into the couch, that's building willpower that I can use for other stuff.
You got it. Cross-training for your mind. And it's not just exercise either.
What else besides exercise can have this ripple effect on our self-discipline?
One of the articles you shared, it talked about mindful eating.
Oh.
And get this, it actually ties into self-control.
Really?
Yeah, paying attention to our food choices, like resisting that urge to snack all day, even just, really tasting our food. It strengthens that pause and choose muscle we use for everything.
So if I can resist that extra slice of cake, I'm also building up like the mental strength to stick to my writing goals.
Well, it's not a one-to-one thing, but yeah, you're getting at it.
Yeah.
It's that ability to hit the brakes before just going with our gut reaction.
Mhm.
And the more we practice that, the easier it gets to make those intentional choices, no matter what it's about, whether it's food, work, you name it.
It's like we're spreading that self-discipline muscle throughout our lives. Okay, this is getting me pumped up. But before we get too carried away with our newfound superpowers, there was one last thing from your notes I wanted to hit. You highlighted this part about the fear of success. Sounds kind of strange, right? Why would anyone be afraid to succeed?
It's wild, isn't it? We spend so much time focused on overcoming obstacles that we forget to think about what happens if we actually get what we want.
Huh.
It's not always a conscious fear, but sometimes we sabotage ourselves because deep down we're scared of what success might bring.
So what kind of fears are we talking about?
It's different for everyone, of course, but some common ones are like fear more responsibility or not being good enough for those higher expectations, even like losing the old us.
Yeah.
Change is scary, even when it's good.
That makes a lot of sense. Like if we've always thought of ourselves as someone who's trying to be more disciplined, if we actually become that, well, that's a pretty big identity shift. No wonder it's intimidating.
Exactly. It's about recognizing those fears and like really questioning if they're even true.
Yeah.
What's the worst that could happen? Are these fears real or just like echoes from the past?
So we need to shine a light on the shadows that might be holding us back. Even if we don't realize they're there. This conversation has given me so much to think about.
I know, right? It's exciting. And sometimes those fears, they can be useful too. Maybe that fear of success is a sign that these goals aren't really what we want, or that we're chasing something that doesn't fit with who we are anymore.
So it's not just about blindly charging ahead. We need to check in with ourselves along the way, make sure we're still on the right track.
100%. Self-discipline should be about curiosity, about being kind to ourselves. It's a journey, not a finish line.
I love that. Such a good point to end on. We covered so much in this deep dive. We talked about reframing self-discipline, embracing boredom, the power of mindset, remembering to be kind to ourselves.
It's been amazing. I hope it's giving you some real practical tools to build that self-discipline that feels good, that feels sustainable.
You too. And listener, remember, you don't have to do it all at once. Small steps. Be kind to yourself. And celebrate those wins along the way. Until next time.